Okay. Can you hear the sound's okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya 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 Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jannavalabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunjabi Hari Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Shri Radha Muridar ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Shri Bhagavatam ki jai, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we will be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Please correct me if I have this wrong. I have Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, Verse 8. Is that correct? It's not correct? Just let me know. Varanti tenyo namupasita striyo griheshu maitunya pareshu chaishisha yajantirshantyana vedana dakshinam vrityai param gyanti pashunatadvida. Translation and purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It's a little bit of a lengthy purport, so we'll read it, we'll get through it. Lots of stuff in here. Hare Krishna. The materialistic followers of Vedic rituals, giving up the worship of the Lord, instead practically worship their wives, and thus their homes become dedicated to sex life. Such materialistic householders encourage one another in such whimsical behavior. Understanding ritualistic sacrifice is a necessary item for bodily maintenance. They perform unauthorized ceremonies in which there is no distribution of foodstuffs or charity to the Brahmins and other respectable persons. Instead, they cruelly slaughter animals such as goats without any understanding of the dark consequences of their activities. Report. False pride is certainly not complete without sex indulgence. Thus, lusty materialistic householders are not attracted to worshiping saintly persons, but rather worship their wives as a source of constant sex pleasure. The mentality of such condemned persons is described by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita, idam madhya maya labdam, imam prapse manoratam, idam astidam api me, bhavishyati punardanam. So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. Generally, materialistic householders consider themselves to be very religious. In fact, by earning money to support a band of relatives, they consider themselves to be more pious than the quote unquote irresponsible sadhus, who do not struggle to maintain family members. Worshipping the material body, they are contemptuous of the humble Brahmins, who are generally not very advanced in economic development. They consider such so-called beggars to be unworthy objects of charity and instead perform sacrifices only for the enhancement of the false prestige of their own family members. Madhvacharya stated in this regard, Upeksha Vaiharim Tetu Budva Yajya Patantyada. In spite of proudly considering themselves to be great performers of religious ceremonies, those who neglect the Lord and his devotees certainly fall down. Such foolish persons sometimes bless each other by saying, "May you be blessed with the great wealth of gorgeous flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, and beautiful women." Men who are controlled by the nature of women become exactly like women. Materialistic women are uninterested in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord and strive for their own selfish happiness. Therefore, they eagerly take service from their husbands and become most discouraged if the husband prefers to serve the personality of Godhead. Being lost in such a fool's paradise, both husband and wife mutually encourage each other in temporary happiness. They do not like to speak or hear about the pastimes of the Lord, but prefer to discuss their own families. Still, devotees of the Lord, being mature in the mode of goodness, are always ready to act mercifully towards such conditioned souls who are just like vain animals. When the devotees of the Lord preach that human beings should not slaughter animals, materialistic householders are often, very often, astonished and inquire if it is actually possible to subsist on a vegetarian diet. Thus, being completely ignorant of the material mode of goodness, what to speak of spiritual knowledge, such condemned materialists have no hope beyond the mercy of the devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham Ukam Karoti Vachalam Pungam Lankaite Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Begging the mercy and grace of all the assembled Vaishnavas and the unassembled Vaishnavas across the globe and throughout time that we can represent the message of Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam here in the Sangam of Devotees, expressing gratitude to Ananda Bihari Prabhu, Mrita Kishori Devi, and all the devotees engaged in organizing and keeping this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam Sangha going, and thanking all the devotees for being assembled here today with us. Um, Also reminding myself to check the verses before you sign up for giving class because you don't know what you're going to get if you just pick the date. Um, so, Hare Krishna. This verse certainly has a lot in it. We're not going to get to all of it. We'll leave some time for questions and discussions, and very much wanting to hear from the devotees and the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis assembled here about questions, inputs, insights. Would love to hear from others. Make this interactive as much as possible. Two things come to me as I read in this verse and purport. We'll start at the beginning. Materialistic followers of Vedic rituals. What does that mean? I'm just curious if anybody here, I don't really have access to the chat and my screen is being shared, so I can't see everyone on screen. Just curious if someone would like to, if we have participation from the group, when they hear the materialistic followers of Vedic rituals, somebody wanted to explain what they mean by what that means to them when they hear that.
That's a prosperity gospel. You
Okay.
follow the rules to get the good stuff.
Follow the rules to get the good stuff. Okay. Anybody want to add to that, or something different, or expand on that more?
That's basically what I was going to say. It's the I give so I could get. Follow the mindset of Karma Kanda, and I will do this to get a good life in this life and then the next. And there's no connection in terms of loving feelings or reciprocation with divinity other than I do this for you, you do this for me. It's kind of
Okay.
manipulative right now.
So you're doing all the things, but there's a motivation of getting something in return. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes.
So what does it mean to be a devotee? The big question.
Doing things for pleasure of the Lord.
Doing things for the pleasure of the Lord. Okay. So how do you know if someone's a devotee?
Can I, may I ask a question?
Of course. I don't know who's asking the question, but
This is Mitravinda.
hey, Mr.
Hi
Vinda.
Krishna. Hi
Hey,
Krishna.
Krishna.
So the word it extends to being devoted, and that
Mm,
is a blanket. It's not something that we own as practicing Vaishnavas. Um, a devotee of the Lord means that one is devoted to the service, thoughts about, and a study of what Krishna loves.
right. So it's like a devotee of who? Devotee where? Right? Is that what I'm getting? Like devoted to, like the devotee, devotee of the
Yes.
Lord, devotee of Krishna, Krishna Bhakta.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So how do we know if someone's, how can you tell that in another person? Or
Maybe they
can you?
are attached materially.
Sorry?
Materially.
They shine.
They shine. What were you saying, Ananda Bihari?
They are detached. They are indifferent to material things.
There's a detachment from material things.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be ostentatious, though. It shouldn't be a main character. Look at how detached he is. It shouldn't even be seen. This person's heart is somewhere else, right, Dayal? Like Lord
Right.
Chaitanya said, your heart's somewhere else, but you take care of business at home.
Yeah. So these are all good answers, and I think what we know is, or what we're seeing is that it's something that you can't judge externally so well, and that everything can look really well on the outside, but you don't really know what's going on the inside. And sometimes things can look a mess on the outside, but inside there's an intent that Krishna sees that characterizes the quality of that devotee, right? And it becomes difficult for us sometimes in devotional communities because we have the things that are prescribed for us to do that are supportive of our devotional life, right? And so it doesn't just mean that I have Krishna in my heart, therefore I can do whatever I want. Because if we have devotion in our heart, we're naturally going to want to understand the things that please Krishna the most, right? And so, and I love the point that Mitravinda made about being a Krishna devotee, because some people ask, well, if I love Krishna, can I do, I was once um, giving a class. It was at the Bhakti Center years ago, and it was when we were doing some like a Bhakti life training of some sort, teaching people about the principles of what it meant to practice Krishna consciousness, bring Bhakti into your life. And somebody was asking a question about vegetarianism, about cooking meat, and they were wondering, well, like, what if I cook meat, but I want to serve it with love and devotion to Krishna? Like, is that bhakti? I thought about it, and I was just like, well, obviously, we're like, no, you can't do that. But I was like, well, why? And it's like, well, when we think about Krishna bhakti specifically, right? Like, what is the definition of bhakti that Krishna, Rupa Goswami gives to us in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, right? Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana kamajanapatam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttama. It's devotional activities done in an attempt to serve and please Krishna. So what is it that pleases Krishna, right? So we understand that Krishna is Govinda, right? He is Gopal, the protector of the cow. So we wouldn't want to offer or serve somebody to Krishna. So for us, it even goes beyond like what is right or wrong and what is pleasing to Krishna, right? If Krishna is the Lord of our hearts, whom we are trying to dedicate our lives to, right? And so it's kind of like we go from this place of like being spiritual to being God conscious to being Krishna conscious, right? So what does it mean to love and serve Krishna? So when we want to go, what does it mean to love and serve Krishna? We want to understand what are the things that please Krishna specifically, because that's what we're trying to come into relationship with. And at the same time, we know, based on our discussion just thus far in this verse, is that we can do all of those things specifically, externally, but if it's not done in the mood of trying to please Krishna, there's that tinge of ego inside. And most of us, all of us, myself first and foremost, come into the category of some sort of karma mishra bhakti, jnana mishra bhakti. Like it's mixed. We're not pure devotees, but we're not just like wretched materialists who have no desire to serve Krishna whatsoever in our heart. There's a mix, and we're trying to tip that scale more from less of serving my ego and my materialistic needs and more towards just trying to be fully dedicated towards Krishna, right? And so it's helpful for us to keep this in mind so that we can be um, the definition of a Brahmin is a broad-minded person, right? Contrasted to a Kripana, which is a narrow-minded person, right? And so for us to, as we perform our services, to keep in mind that what makes a devotee is not necessarily the external performances of X, Y, and activities, characterized by the very phrase, the materialistic followers of Vedic rituals. So when I read that, I mean, like, you can follow the Vedic rituals to a T, right? You can even follow the prescribed, right? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur giving an example of a boat person who's rowing a boat all night long, rowing, 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 rowing the boat. And then the morning comes, the sun rises, and they're in the same place. What happened? Who knows the story that fills in the blank of why they didn't move anywhere?
Because they were still anchored to the dock.
Because the dock was still anchored, right? And what represents that anchor of the dock? It's the internal, all the stuff that we've been talking about. He'll describe it as making offenses or just having the materialistic desire of something other to serve and please Krishna, right? So we can even be chanting our japa, we can be serving the deities, we can be doing all of this, we can be speaking and giving Bhagavatam class and just waiting for people to tell you how wonderful of a class you gave, how, as Bhima said, ooh, look how detached they are, look how humble they are, look how this and that they are, right? And so for us as devotees, there's this dual activity of performing the activities of devotional service while simultaneously checking what's going on inside. And this is why performing devotional service in the association of devotees is so important. Why we hear again and again and again why it's so important for devotees to perform service in the association of devotees, to perform our sadhana in the association of devotees, to perform kirtan, the Sankirtan movement, right? In order for us to perform the congregational chanting of the holy names. Why is there so much emphasis on us doing stuff together? Because that's where all those ego buttons get pushed. That's where all the icky stuff inside my heart starts to get exposed. That's where I get really tested, right? That's where I start to see my hidden motivations that I may not have even been aware of, right? When all of a sudden I'm brushing up against another human being who also has their ego identifications and their hidden motivations, right? And we all realize, like, holy, but Jesus, none of us really have Krishna completely in the center here. So the waves of my waters are rubbing up against yours, right? And then what happens? We have conflict, and then we just want to, okay, well, I just gonna be alone, or I'm gonna go away, or I'm gonna whatever. And it becomes really hard. And thus, Srila Prabhupada gives that final instruction that we can show our love for him, but how well we work together. Why? Not because it's just some sort of like random principle, because he knows that's also how we will advance, right? How we will advance when we submit ourselves to the process of being in relationship with other people, right? To the degree that I'm willing and capable to allow myself to be seen, right? How many of us have people in our life, whether it's a senior mentor or a peer, where we can ask somebody, what are the things I'm not seeing about myself, right? You want to ask a dangerous, you want to ruin your day? Find a friend that you trust and ask, what am I not seeing about myself? Right? How can I become a better devotee? Right? Um,
How about 10 years?
10 years?
When you are made aware, especially excuse me, I was running. When you're made aware of something about your character and deeper desires, um, later in life, it takes years. It doesn't take years, obviously, but you always remember for years that personality trait that needed correcting, that needed purifying, and
Right.
you always, you harken back. You never forget.
Yeah, it stays with you and sometimes becomes a lifelong project. And one of the things we have to be careful of also is that we don't therefore take it upon ourselves to uh, feel like I'm going to do a service to everyone by pointing out the ways in which they need to grow. And sometimes we take it upon ourselves to do that, whether we're sitting on the Vyasasana or whether we're whatever it might be. Um, that's not the role we're necessarily meant to play. There's a beautiful telling of the story of of Jesus that I heard someone describe about when he catches someone caught in an act of unrighteousness, or is described as sin in the Bible, in a common community place, and everyone's ready to punish this person through the act of stoning them, and it's where we get the phrase, they who have not one who has not sinned can cast the first stone, right? So this person is caught in an act of unrighteousness. Everyone's ready, like the law is true, like they committed a crime, they're meant for punishment, everyone's got their stone and they're ready to throw it. And then Jesus goes and has a word with that person and says, one who has not sinned, cast the first stone, right? And everyone drops their stone and walks away. And then Jesus has a moment with that person and says, leave your life of sin. Don't do that anymore. And people hear that story and they say, see, Jesus told them to stop what they're doing. Therefore, we need to tell people what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And the person telling the story says, so you hear that story and you think that where you fit in that story is the role of Jesus? You're not Jesus in that story. You and me, we're the people holding the stone, putting down the stone, and walking away so that Jesus or God can have a moment with that person, right? So, yes, people have lessons they need to learn. People have ways in which they need to grow, right? And that's a God project. That's God working in their life. Our role sometimes, even if we see something, is to be vessels and containers of compassion so that they can be held, that as God does their work in them, as Krishna does the inner surgery to extract the elements of the ego from their heart, which can be very painful at times. I believe it was Sridhananda Maharaj himself who's led the translation and purports of these very verses that we're reading, who said, in our earlier days of Krishna consciousness, we used to pray to Lord Nrsimhadev, my dear Lord, please rip out the anartas in our hearts so that we can come and be closer to you. He said, after years of practice, I've learned to adjust that prayer. My dear Lord, please gently, in a kind and sensitive way, remove the anartas in my heart over the course of time, right? So as Krishna's performing that surgery, our job as a community of devotees is to hold loving space for people so that we can support each other in that process. Sometimes that's our job, our primary job. So this is why it's important for us to perform association and community. But this is why it's so glorious for us to come and be here in the morning Sangha, for us to, whatever it looks like, right? And that is why, and the next point we've had some discussion, but I want to leave more space for questions and answers, as you, Ananda Bihari, mentioned. Um, this is why not just community and Sangha is important, but relationships are extraordinarily important. This is why families are also really important. Um, Intimate relationships also become extraordinarily important. It's sometimes the places where we have the most spiritual growth. Um, and I think, without getting to every detail of this purport, which some of it may have been a little intense, even just to read, what to speak of here, I do think that one of the greatest misfortunes in spiritual communities sometimes. And I would also say one of the greatest misunderstandings sometimes when we hear this is we lose and misunderstand the importance of healthy family lives. And I think one of the things that I'll go out on a limb and say can do a disservice to movements is when we don't emphasize the importance of people building healthy family lives. And we create a rhetoric that implies that having a lovely family or home life is somehow something wrong or distracting to our spiritual life. And it creates a situation where people are split, thinking that my home and family life becomes something that is the deterrent to my spiritual life. And you find people who therefore don't invest in the most important material aspect of their life, which can become, right, a spiritual process in and of itself if we see it in a way that there's a beautiful book um, that was written by, again, a Christian author. His name is Gary Thomas. It's called Sacred Marriage. And he says, what if marriage wasn't meant to make you happy, but meant to make you holy? And the idea of even our intimate relationships with a husband or a wife or intimate partner in our family become the very vessel, that's Grihastha ashram, the very vessel through which I get to love another person the way that Krishna is trying to love me, right? And I'm not always an easy person to love. I don't always make it easy for Krishna, right? I sometimes reject Krishna. I most of the time reject Krishna, right? If everything doesn't go my way, I get angry at Krishna. And yet Krishna is still bringing his love towards me. So when someone pushes my buttons, when someone does this or that or whatever it is, we have the opportunity, wow, how is Krishna trying to love me? How do I then get to see the world through Krishna's eyes and try to extend love and be a vessel of Krishna's love in somebody else's life or other people's lives, right? And so I think there's an importance when we read verses like this to understand, yes, it's important for me, like Romeo and Juliet, Romeo or Juliet describes Romeo, you are the god of my idolatry, right? Vrinasrupu makes this reference, right? That it's not that we don't want to substitute another person, right, for Krishna or for God, but to recognize people in an appropriate way, right? We don't want to fall into this to the spin of losing the spirit of Krishna consciousness in our heart, and at the same time recognizing that our relationships can sometimes be the catalyst for us to make the most spiritual advancement and to soften our hearts so that we can um, grow in our bhakti, and at the same time, um, it's extraordinarily important for devotees to feel a sense of stability at home and to build a container through which they can practice devotional service. And if we have this rhetoric or this split that having a family or having a home life is somehow something wrong and materialistic, um, we're going to end up in situations where devotees um, don't have the proper foundation for themselves to practice bhakti in a stable, comfortable way. And so I think that one of the shifts that I pray for and I see happening is that we need to be able to encourage people and not just describe the deep, dark well of family life, but to help people understand what it means to invest properly, you know, in what Mother Teresa said that if you want to change the world to bring loving peace, I don't remember the exact quote. She said, "Go home and love your family." you know, and so, um, and you find so many verses and not verses, verses or statements, you know, Srila Prabhupada talking about the importance of parents serving their children, right, and understanding the importance of serving their children. You can't serve your children unless you have a respect and love. Talk about speaking it from a male perspective, right? To love your children. How can you love your children without honoring the human being from which those children came out of? You know, and so and doesn't mean that we not all of us have children. I don't have any human children at this point. I've got two dogs, um, but for us to I feel to give a temperament and balance to what's being shared here, to honor the principle of what's being stated, that yes, and that goes to anything, for us to not um, replace Krishna with anything in our life, whether it be a person, identity, an object, a reputation, and at the same time for us to honor and recognize. And I'll stop here so we get questions and reflections, because I want to give some space here for us to honor the importance of, and we can give a whole class on that, a stable, holistic, healthy family life is, I think, sometimes the most important element of our spirituality, considering that 99.99% of people exist in the Grihastha ashram. I'm happy to share more on that, but also want to just open up for questions, discussions, reflections, corrections, opinions from the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnavis. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dayal Gauranga Prabhu. Bhima is raising his hand. He has a very holistic family, holistic backup. Paula is
Glad.
here.
Yeah, and like a hologram, it comes and goes at will. Um, the, the what a wonderful class in the way that you handled that. And um, I feel that when we say family life, Christ said, love thy neighbor, and of course, it all begins at home. Do unto others, etc., as you would have them do unto you. So you have this instant empathy for whoever you're dealing with, your spouse or your children, even in the worst of times, to try to have empathy in that way. When I was that family life, or that ability to share love to those who are close in proximity to you, as well as close in experience and time, life. But Radhanath Maharaj, I remember when I came to see him in his first preaching center in Athens, Ohio, little cottage right in the middle of a huge university, bucolic university. Long story short, when I stepped in, and it was just him and Krishna Kata, when I started coming to the temple that was at Athens, I always felt in my chest, this is home. This is home. I recognized it as home, and that was because, of course, Maharaj at that time, who was the same person then as he is now. And I was so lucky, so much grace, to mercy, to be able to have his association like that. But it always felt like home, and I always felt like family with him. So that the idea of family also extends out a bit into the deep, intimate friendships that devotees have amongst themselves. I notice that sometimes you see that there are a group of devotees that they're like a family. They go to the festivals together, or they talk to each other and stuff like that. So I just thought I'd mention that the family also extends outside into our social life.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Thank you. There's a lot of beautiful things he said, but I also see Bruce's hand up. So should we go to Bruce?
Yeah, let's go to Bruce.
Haribol. I have a question regarding what you said in terms of what am I not seeing about myself. Last night we heard, what is it about me that I do not want to know about myself? So in order to start asking these very introspective, deep questions of self, regarding self, I feel like it requires such a dismantling of your ego to be able to ask these questions honestly and initiate the change through some of the things that you may find. This can be a very scary process and perhaps even, deeply, deeply hurtful. And it's interesting because I'm about to embark on a journey, go away for a while, which is something I've never done since I'm 18 years old. And this is at the heart of the mission, if you will. Um, how do we go about this? And Dayal, you exhibit and live so much compassion when you engage in, just conversation or, even a class like this, you give so much of your heart. How can one go about this gently and being kind to self in order to really see, what's in this unpacking?
Thank you for a beautiful question. We only have a few minutes left, but I think in some ways you gave some of your own answer of being compassionate to self. I think it's important to remember who we really are, that whatever we see in us that we don't like or that seems to be materialistic or whatever it might be, that's not us. You know, there are two philosophies on there are multiple philosophies on the identity of the soul, right? So there's like the original sin model or the idea that the soul is inherently broken and wretched and in need of repairing. There's the idea that the soul is just like a blank slate, has no identity, and needs to be constructed and can go either way. And there's the idea of Krishna Swarupahoy, Jivara Swarupahoy, Krishna Nityadas, that we are actually inherently pure. The soul is inherently Satchitananda, filled with joy, bliss, and knowledge, eternally joyful and cognizant and aware, eternally a servant of Krishna. So that's our true nature. That's who we really are. And so when we discover these things, it's not like, oh my, like the difference between like guilt and shame, like guilt is like, I did something wrong. Like I took a wrong turn. I did something that I'm not proud of. Shame is the idea that like, I am wrong. I am broken. I am a wretch. I am a horrible person, right? That's shame. And that's not true. That's not true
Mm,
for anyone.
mm.
You are not a horrible person. You are not. We may hear the rhetoric sometimes, and we sometimes hear like super advanced devotees describing like otherworldly expressions of humility that sometimes bewilder us and are kind of like beyond us in a way that like we just kind of look at that and be like, I don't get what they're saying, you know? But
I
and
do
so
know.
try to, mimic that and be like, okay, well, this Bhaktivinoda Thakur thought he was so terrible, like I must be 50 million times worse. It's like that's like a different category of understanding those expressions of minute. Let's just kind of put those on a shelf for just a little minute. But like for us to recognize, like, no, like and at the same time, for us to recognize, you could read books that describe like the spiritual identities of like who Rupa Goswami was and is in the spiritual world. It's like, oh, we know he's not a lower than a woman. Still, he's actually like a Manjari in Gopi Bhav and Krishna's Leela. Like that's who he is, you know? Um, and so for us to know, like, oh my God, like, and for us to have reminders of that, it's so important. And again, that's the role of having Sangha in our life. It's Sangha is not just, and I want to temper what I said earlier, Sangha is not just people to push our buttons, like that's a Sangha. Sangha is also, as Gauranga was mentioned, it's where we come together to exchange hope, where we also come to remind each other, like, what are the things I'm not seeing? It's like a friend's not going to be like, whoo, can't wait for you. So glad you asked that question. I've been waiting for you to ask that question for years. Okay, sit down. I got a lot of things to say. It's also like, what are the beautiful things that you don't see about yourself, Bruce? Right? If we unmuted all ourselves right here, like there'd be a shower of things that people see about you in the way that you serve in Thursday Night Cures, and the way that you serve, and the way that you serve in so many festivals, and the way that you show up here, even when you're on your way to work or doing something in class, like also to remind each other the beautiful things about you. Like that's who you really are, you know? And so it's not just like to come down and tear each other down. Like my job isn't to my job isn't to, the point isn't to somehow point out your ego. It's to remind you of your true spiritual identity as a servant of Krishna, right? And the beauty of your heart. Vaisheshika Prabhu has a beautiful phrase that he makes his website like fan the spark, right? So fan the spark. It's like see the little spark and fan it and let it grow and know that that can turn into an inferno and that's who you are. So also finding yourself to be in good association and let yourself receive that. And so the process of it is really not just finding out how wretched I am, but just seeing what are the things I need to let go of that are getting in the way of the sun of my soul shining, right? And everything that I see is this there, whether it's dirt that's not me. That's just dirt on the mirror that can get cleansed off, Chaito Darpana Marjana, or it's just a cloud that's blocking the effulgence of the sun that can part ways and give sense. But my essence is that pure soul. So to remind ourselves of that is really important. Like, Krishna, please don't tell me how terrible I am. Please remind me of my essence. And when we that soul, that essence, when we have a like, what is humility? And I'll end here because we got to finish. Humility isn't just thinking I'm so terrible. It's an honest estimation of myself in the presence of Krishna. Krishna, you know, con- confidence comes in understanding that I'm a beautiful eternal spark of God's splendor, and humility is recognizing that everyone else is too, right? So I don't have to see myself as better and saying, wow, I'm just a little drop of Krishna's infinite greatness. So it's less about I'm so terrible and more about Krishna's so amazing and I'm somehow a part of that.
So beautiful. Wow.
You're
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the
Thank
best
you.
in your journey.
Am
All
I,
right, let's
am I
roll it over.
beautiful? I need somebody to say that I'm beautiful.
Seema, you're so beautiful.
Oh
I don't know
man.
anybody who's more beautiful.
Oh man, that feels so good. Thanks, Dayal. That makes my day.
God bless. Um, Hare Krishna. So we're 2 minutes over. I don't know if Darshan's going on or they're waiting for us or we're waiting for them, but Krishna is extremely beautiful, and there's some beautiful devotees that decorated Krishna in such a way to enhance our ability to see that beauty that we're going to have
And
the opportunity to be a part of in just a moment.
unfortunately, like our false ego, the way is blocked, and no one's in the temple right now with a camera.
Okay, so Krishna's just going to increase our eagerness, right? To,
Sometimes devotees give darshan of their particular deities that they have at home. Um, I,
oh,
I know
that'd be
that
beautiful. Is
Nityananda
anybody?
is Nityananda Chandra on because he has wonderful deities, a wonderful altar. And you, Dayal, are you at home?
I'm at home. I'm not in a room that has any beautiful deities to share. We could just look at Ananda Bihari's beautiful face.
That
That's
big
inspiring
potato
me.
head.
Yeah.
That's quite
Thank you.
inspiring.
Thank you. This feels like the real Sangha.
Oh,
Encourage.
there's is it Isaiah? I don't know the iPad has a beautiful. Let's pin that for everyone. There he is. Hare Krishna. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Jai Jagannath, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra Devi ki Jai. Thank
Hare
you so
Krishna.
much.
Jai Prabhu. Dayal Gauranga, you have a minute for to stage for the afterglow? A little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Blow me up.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question.
Let me
In
just
the
remove this
family,
for Prabhuji here. Um, he's got a spotlight. Let me just remove that for him so he doesn't feel he's being spotlighted.
I have a
Okay.
childhood friend. He's a nice guy, but he has a drinking problem.
You have a friend who's a nice person but has a drinking problem. Okay.
Childhood friend, my best friend from since I remember myself. And
Hmm.
he has a wife, a woman he lives with now, and she has the same problem. And they sort of support each other in that problem, and they're spiraling down from what I can see.
Yeah. Support each other, meaning like it feeds into each other, like our
Yeah,
drinking feeds into each other. Yeah.
yeah. So how to avoid this situation in the family where you feel supported, but you're not being supported in the right way? There's like peace, but the goal is like misdirected. And sometimes it feels comfortable immediately, but in the long run, it's a well. So how to
Are you
avoid that?
asking how do you support them or like just for them? Like how do people in that situation get out of that?
How to not fall into the same pattern where you support each other but not for the right reason, not for the right purpose, and then you get comfortable materially and you support this taste and everything, but there's no proper goal. And then the family life becomes
Yeah, your sound cut off there. I don't know what happened in Nanda Bihari Prabhu. I think I got the gist of what you're saying, but your sound cut off. Um, Gail raised her hand. I don't know if Gail like shot her hand up as like I want to answer or add to that question, or you had something separate, Gail.
Separate, Prabhu.
Okay. So um, yeah, good question and a lot there. In order to change, somebody needs to want to change, and somebody needs to see how something is a problem in their life. That's the first step. And so if two people are in a situation like we may see something and it just feels like a problem to us, they need to see it first. And that's why it's hard to help somebody who doesn't see something as a problem in their life. And so I think first and foremost, somebody needs to get to the place of recognizing that something's not working. And the material world is designed that way to at some point bring us to the realization that this isn't working, whatever it is, whether it's drinking, whether it's whatever it is, something's not working. Um, and that's why I think it's important for us to have a multitude of relationships in our life, right? That can help and support us, and sometimes the best thing that we can do for our partner is to work on ourselves. You know, we sometimes expect our partner to be the fixer in our lives, um, and that's not the case. And but it's important for us to get the support and resources that we need, maybe outside of that relationship. And I don't know the details of this relationship, and sometimes, um, yeah, if something's not working, some relationships don't work out. If you just recognize, like, I want to make a change in my life, and I'm moving in a particular direction, and and first and foremost, I need to be able to take the opportunity to figure out what I need to do for my support structure. You can have a conversation with that partner of like, hey, I want to make a change. Do we want to support each other in this? Um, I don't see it's like, oh, we're supporting each other in our drinking. I think it's that we both are um, um, struggling with the same thing. And so it just feeds into itself. And so somebody at some point needs to just decide that they want to make a change and then work on that for themselves and then see if the partner's also wanting or willing to get on board with that. I don't know if that's like a real satisfying answer, but
It's very satisfying. Thank you. Thank you,
food
Dr.
for
Ranga.
thought.
Prabhu?
It's also something that will just take a lot of getting to know the people, and I would just say the foundation is that like somebody needs to want to make a change first. If nobody sees something as a problem, like in AA as an example, when I heard you Beam, I don't want to cut you off. It's like in AA, you walk in an AA room, it's like the qualification for walking into an AA, and we're just talking about drinking, is I have a problem with alcohol. If someone walks in an AA meeting and you're like, I don't really have a problem with alcohol, like I drink every now and then, it's not really a problem. They'll say, great, good for you. You don't need to be here. This is a place for people who have a problem, who have recognized that this activity is ruining their lives. If you don't think you have a problem, you don't need to be here. This program isn't for you. And so there needs to come like a first step of like something's not right. And if you don't have that in either party, then you just need to wait for that to emerge because nothing's going to happen.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Demon, do you want to say something real quick? But then
Yeah, I
before
just had a
Gail,
best.
her hand
Yeah,
was up.
very quickly, very quickly. I just had a best friend who passed away from alcoholism.
Hmm.
They found him on the floor of his kitchen, and I watched his demise over the years. And it is true, as Dayal said, you have to want to, and a lot of people are moved at a slow, a slow suicide. They don't care. They're going out on a ship on an ocean of alcohol. The question is, Ananda Bihari, are they alcoholics or are they just devotees who are partying?
They're not devotees.
So okay,
They support
so
each
then
other
you
in
have
the habit. There's
what?
peace and harmony in the family, and they really, fan each other's habit. There's perfect
Are they
harmony because
drinking all day? Are they drinking every day?
sort of, yeah. They
Oh,
celebrate
okay. All
Allah
right. All right.
every
So they're
day.
alcoholics. All right. So, so I tell you, when I look back at what I thought I could have done, um, I was, I was advised that to keep a distance, and that was the worst advice that I ever got. because he was crying out for, a relationship with God. He truly was. And I gave him everything that I could do, but in the end, it just it just got out of hand. You wouldn't hear from him for a long period of time. So you can see that this has an arc to it. And if children are involved, sometimes it's almost your duty to step in and say, hey, man, just check out this pamphlet from a AA, or do you think you have a problem? Like Dayal Gauranga said, just be sincerely upfront with them. Say, hey, do you think that this is a problem at all? And if they say no, you're not going to get anywhere. But you can definitely turn them on to Prashadam. Does wonders. Prashadam is the poison of material life. It will ruin if you take enough prashadam. So, anyways, Prabhu, that was my own thing with my friend, and I did what I could as far as like, say, don't worry about it. Krishna's got you. The Lord, the good Lord. That's how he used to relate to Krishna, the good Lord. I would say, dude, the good Lord's got you, man. I know that you're not going to break free from this, or that you don't want to break free from this. But the good Lord's got you. Just always remember him. That was basically all I could give him in the end.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu, for your love and compassion for that friend and for others, and your wisdom and support. Yeah, it's a tough one. There's a whole 12-step program called Al-Anon, which is specifically for people who have a loved one who's struggling with an addiction. And the challenge of just that, right? When someone's struggling with an addiction and we feel helpless or we feel responsible, we just wrap up into the whole thing of like trying to help somebody who's not able to help themselves, and what that does to those people. It's a ripple effect. Dear Gail, I would love to hear your voice.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Wonderful to hear
Hi,
you
Krishna.
after too long. Too long. Yeah, I have a question and I have some kind of inkling about the answer, but I need your input, your feedback. So, we have a soul, or we are a soul, but we also have a material personality, right? And that material personality has both good qualities and bad qualities, separate from the soul. So, my question is, when we see somebody exhibiting good qualities, how can we understand if those good qualities are coming from their material personality or from the soul?
Got it. Um, Thank you, Gail. When you said about like good qualities or bad qualities, it immediately makes me think of the question like what is good and what is bad. And when I think of Krishna's definition of truth and falsity in the Bhagavad Gita, about that which is true, Sat is that which is eternal, and that which is false is that which is temporary. So one way for us to shift or even reframe the idea of like good or bad is just simply that which aligns with truth and that which aligns with falsity, that which aligns us with our eternal identity and that which aligns us with our false identity, right? So we talk about like, what is good, what is Sat is that which brings me closer to truth, which brings me closer to my eternal identity, which brings me closer to my eternal service to Krishna. That which is bad, which is that which is false, which is that which is just temporary and illusory and bring me away from Krishna, right? And so it just kind of takes the edge off of like judgment of, I'm not saying that you're bringing that judgment, but it just kind of brings the edge off of like, oh, that's so bad and you're terrible. It's like, oh, that's just bringing you further away from Krishna and me and my true identity and ultimately causing suffering. Um, I don't know if there is a straightforward way. I mean, you read in the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction, about how like the body as a devotee becomes more pure and like steps into their eternal identity, like their body even becomes purified and spiritual even in this very life, right? Like the body of a pure devotee becomes spiritualized, right? And so in some ways that I think there becomes like a little bit like of an overlap where anything that becomes utilized in the service of Krishna becomes in and itself spiritual, right? So like an object, right? A material object can take on spiritual qualities because it's being engaged in spiritual activities, right? And so my material personality, right, is all of a sudden becoming something spiritual because it's being engaged and offered in Krishna service. Um, Now,
Mm.
the difference of what's really truly us, the Satchitananda, is what's permanent. So there may be qualities of my material identity that I'm not going to carry with me into the spiritual world if I ever get there because it was just something that was part of my identity, but it was used in service in this world, right? So, and we don't know what that's going to be, what that's going to cross over, you know. Our dear Bhakti Tirtha Swami, when he was leaving this world, I happened to have the fortune of being in the room, not when he was leaving in the room, but in his final public appearance, and he was sitting in the temple room of Gita Nagari, just telling people, like, I'm entering into Nirjana Bhajan, and he's like, I'm no longer going to be seeing public people. This is my last public address, and I'm becoming aware of where I'm going, and I'm not John Favors, which was his legal name at birth. He said, I'm not Ganesham Das, which was his initiated name by Srila Prabhupada. He said, and I'm not Bhakti Tirtha Swami. I'm not going to be walking around in Vrindavan with a sannyas danda and glasses on and Bhakti Tirtha Swami. That's not my eternal identity. What parts of his personality were, is he going to have the same smile in Vrindavan? I hope so, because it's a really beautiful smile, you know. Um, but we don't know. But there is a sense where, you know, what we take with us, we don't know. But we do know that there are aspects of our personality in here that can become spiritualized, and we know that which is eternal is that which is us, and that which is temporary. And so. But we do know that the spiritual world is filled with variety. So we do know that there's humor, there's intelligence, there's expertness. What is the name of Radharani? There was a devotee who used to make beautiful sandesh here for Radharani a long time ago. Her husband was Gaur Shakti. Her name was, forget her name. There was a wonderful devotee, but her name was a name of Radharani who was a name of Radharani is so expert at everything she does. That was the name. I'm forgetting her name, but it was a name of Radharani that meant like expert in everything that she does, right? So skill, when we see a devotee who's very skillful, very thoughtful, like maybe that's an eternal quality that they're going to bring into their identity in the spiritual world, or maybe not. I don't know. But whatever it is, we want to fan those sparks, as we said. So that gives you a sense of your question. Whenever Gail asks a question, I always love her questions because I always have a sense that she has a better answer than me or whoever's giving the answer because she's
Not this time.
filled with wisdom. But those are just some thoughts beyond what no, I can't answer that completely, you know.
Well, it sounded complete to me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, there's a sense of like, sometimes people ask questions of like, well, what's the difference between like Krishna's Leela in this world and Krishna's Leela like in Goloka, like the eternal spiritual like act like Goloka versus Gokula? And acharyas will say, well, like only someone who's been in Goloka can actually give the correct answer because they've been there. They can tell you the difference. And so, like, there's certain things, you know. Ayendrabu tells the story of somebody who asked Prabhupada, if everything in the spiritual world's a person, what's the experience of a sweet ball as it's being eaten by Krishna? Like, is it getting digested? Is it getting hurt? Is it dark in there? Like, what's going on? You know? And Ayendrabu said that Prabhupada's answer was, you're just going to have to go there and find out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Talk about an act of surrender.
yeah. Your spiritual identity is a Rascula. Oh, okay. I was kind of hoping for a cowherd boy, but I'll go with it. Hare Krishna.
Thank you again.
Kalavati means skillful. Yeah, that's not the name of this devotee that she was, but yeah. I'm sure there's many names that mean that. Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you. Did we reveal all the Svarupas in the afterglow?
I thought that's what you do in the beginning of class when you're giving everybody's name.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you for tolerating me.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Junior choir, are you ready to chant Hare Krishna loudly, enthusiastically? Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oh, oh, there.
This is an opera. There's a sword.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Junior Choir, Oprah. Yeah, this is an upgrade. Thank you, Isaiah Prabhu. Jai Dayal Gauranga Prabhu, Jai Radhanath Maharaj, all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, and Vaishnavets. Ki Jai to you. Thank you very much. Happy Friday, the 13th. Thank you for your association. Have a wonderful day. Come again tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam never ends. It has all the answers, all the purports. Sometimes the purports are intense, but Dayal Gauranga Prabhu handled them so nicely. Hare Krishna.